Well, greetings everybody, this is Serpentine451 here, aka Tony, and welcome to another episode of Manga Maniacs. And joining me, like always, is Jeffrey. How you doing tonight, Jeffrey?
Salutations, Tony. I'm doing fantastic, and I'm ready to activate my trap card and talk about Please Don't Bully Me, Nagatoro.
Nope, it's Wizard Soul.
Wizard Soul. Yeah, Please Don't Bully Me, Nagatoro. They're basically the same thing. Just one has more math. So, I'm excited to talk about this one today. Do you want to give the opening remarks?
Well, one thing I can say is that for being its own little story, and it did it very well. I don't see it as a tragedy in any way, shape, or form. I see it has more drama elements than an actual tragedy would.
Yes, indeedy. So we go back and forth talking about lighthearted and then darker sorts of mangas. This is my choice for a darker manga. I don't usually like the ones that like linger in hopelessness. So this one kind of tricks you. It starts out like super dark and depressing, but then it gets much more lighthearted as the story goes on.
Yeah, that is true. But in my honest opinion, it wasn't really that dark.
True, but at the same time, I feel like that gives it a little bit more air of realism. Because I mean, real life isn't just endless suffering all the time.
Depends on the kind of person you are.
That's what I think, yeah. So, Wizard Soul is a manga about competitive trading card games. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, I've seen Yu-Gi-Oh! I've seen Beyblade. I know how trading card games work.
But Beyblade is about tops, you silly fool.
Top decking. Anyways.
If you want to make a trading card game anime reference, you go with Card Fight Vanguard.
Yeah, sorry. That's not ringing any bells. Anyway, so just like Bakugan.
Yet again, not a trading card game. Yeah. Those be toys, my dude.
Yeah, this one takes a much more realistic, serious look at trading card games. This one looks deep into like competitive elements. You actually get to see a tournament, and anyone who knows what the term sideboarding means is going to love this manga, definitely. It uses actual terminology in a way that's not too hard, I think, to understand. I already knew what like fatty and combo and counter mean. But when we get past the spoiler-free review, I'll definitely ask you what you thought of it as someone who isn't into the competitive card scene. But so for the spoiler-free review, yeah, this, like, it definitely has something very interesting and unique to say. And it's a unique take. It's just a setting I haven't seen before in a manga. You know, this is the kind of thing that even if it doesn't have amazing art or writing, this is definitely a 5 out of 5 for me, just because I rated on how worth your time it is. And this is definitely something that's out in left field. What do you think?
Well, it tells its story very well. And our protagonist is actually someone that has a bit of a selfless motivation, but ultimately changes her mind at the end, which gave her everything she actually wanted. But it all hinged on the fact that she never really liked this trading card game to begin with. And I like that her struggle made sense, and the fact that her reason for hating this trading card game also made sense. Everything made sense and it was logical. But the one thing I will say is that you're trying to... It's the way you kind of sold this to me. Like, oh, I'm expecting some things. And like, well... I mean, it's true. I mean, it's dramatic. God damn it. Quiet, you.
Yeah, it is definitely a darker tale. I'll sort of take over talking for a little bit while Tony deals with some personal stuff there. Yeah, it doesn't really linger in that despair, but it'll have moments where it just gets darker and darker. Now that you're back, I'll pass it back over to you, Tony, to continue what you were saying.
Well, and basically what I'm trying to say is it's serviceable for what it's trying to do, for the story it's telling in 22 chapters. I just don't think it's... I wouldn't classify it as dark by any means.
Yeah, Like I
I
was saying
mean,
when we
the
were done, like,
personality of our protagonist may be dark when she's actually competing, but not really. So I enjoyed it, but I would say it's good. So it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me.
yeah. So that's a spoiler for your review. You know, if you like trading card games, the competitive aspect of them, this is going to be a fun read. But now let's dive into our book club style discussion because there's a lot to talk about and a lot of characters I really liked in this series, and a lot of characters they did a pretty good job of making me hate. There's some scummy people in this manga. Who do you have any particularly notable characters you like or dislike from
I
this?
mean, a lot of the characters I found very interesting. It's mostly their personalities somewhat reflect the kind of deck they would play in typical card game, manga, or anime fashion. So the one thing that I find very interesting is that our lead character, whom
Manaka.
Monica, yeah,
Yeah.
her deck is centered around Hades and Persephone, and that's the deck she used primarily in the tournament because it is associated with her mother, who was very sickly and always, well, traumatized her in such a way that she would never want to play this game again.
Yeah. The mom, like, I get what the mom was trying to do, but wow, way to completely mentally scar your child for life.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
I
then you
think
have other characters that play certain decks that are very connected to a lot of card game metagames. Like you have terms like burn decks. You have decks that mill their cards for specific effects or situations that would give them a win condition. You also have other different types of deck types in this manga that those who play card games are very familiar with,
yeah. One
whether
thing I
it's for
really
fun
like,
or being competitive.
one quick note I really like. So there's actually something that's not quite accurate about this, and that's that every character uses a different deck. That's not how it works in real life. Like you go to a tournament, you know, in any local game shop, even today in Magic the Gathering, there's going to be at least 3 people running Jeskai control. You know, that I get why they had to do it because like having her play the same deck over and over would be boring. But if you're gonna make her, if you're gonna set up the idea that she's using a deck that beats the current meta, you have to have a meta, and that means that you probably want to have, like, say, like, oh, that deck is very popular. There's lots of other people at this tournament running a burn deck that was inspired by the Glasses Kid.
Well,
Uh,
in a way, they talked about a meta deck that was in the series, and it was a competitor she faced off against. It was
the
that one
Angels?
Glasses individual with the Angel deck.
Yeah, the Angel deck. There are 2 people who run an Angel deck in this, which is pretty nice. Uh, and I like that they differentiated them enough that the battles didn't feel the same.
Yeah, the one thing that I can say about a lot of these characters, they really thought that if they can just stick, well, a lot of players, I play card games with a lot of my friends, and I have a more, depending on the kind of deck that I run, I basically play. Okay, let me just give an example. For Yu-Gi-Oh, the main deck that I use, and I actually have my deck box for my main deck. And this deck is Gem Knights. It is a fusion-based archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can build it in such a way you can get your big fusion monsters out onto the field for pretty much little to no cost at all.
Yeah, cheating out big creatures. That's a pretty common strategy, I think, in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Not necessarily true. There's also the way, one of my another favorite deck of mine that I play online because I don't have the necessary funds to actually build them is Speedroids. And that deck is a synchro-based archetype that is very synergetic, and it's very fast-paced. You can spam smaller monsters onto the field faster in order to get to your big synchro monsters.
Yeah. So before we continue going on about the characters real quick, there's actually something I forgot. We should probably talk about the setting, because
This is
is pretty interesting. Basically, the setting of the show is that card games are everything, kind of like in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, everybody plays this card game called Wizard Soul. Everybody does it. Your GPA in school is tied to your performance in Wizard Soul.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, it's just like an exaggerated joke, but it's basically a very popular card game.
At the same time, like the morning talk show that talks about your birth sign also has advice like, hey, try shuffling your deck with your other hand, Capricorns. That's your lucky technique today.
Yeah, this is actually taking place in just a version of Japan that has this card game called Wizard Soul, so it's nothing too different from our own world.
I wish it was our world. I would love a card game that like every single person on the street would know. That would be nice.
I mean, you can't expect a lot of things from other people, so.
Okay, so that's the setting. The premise here, just a real quick thing, so we can get back to talking about the characters, is that your main character Manaka is secretly like super good at the game, but she hates it because she spent so many times playing against her mother, who would always win. Basically, this girl doesn't like playing it competitively because she's only good at Permission, which is the least fun deck to play against in any game. Basically, she just shuts down everything that the opponent ever tries to do. Hers is the deck that basically says, yeah, I don't want you to play the card game. I want to play the card game. You can't play the card game. So she has to go into this tournament because her dad is crazy in debt. And she's basically got to win in order to get the prize money to save her family, which is it's a pretty good premise. You know, it gives her an excuse to go to the tournament even though she doesn't really like to. It gives an excuse for her main character to be using a deck this mean. You would never see Yugi Moto playing a Permission deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Permission decks are pretty much allotted to more villainous or cutthroat characters.
Yeah. So going back to the character, would it be fair to say that Manaka is your favorite character?
No, I wouldn't say that.
If you say Roman, we're gonna have to go old style fisticuffs for the sake of.
I can see the motivations with a lot of the characters, but I never really connected with any of the characters.
Really, there's no character like that you looked at and you're like, that is how I play card games. That's what I want to be. Not the master deck builder, the big fatty, I mean, I looked at Roman, like, she's my favorite character. Because, like, just the person who goes in there, she's the sort of person who would talk about the heart of the cards mid-game. She's obsessed with combos, she plays a deck, and at one point in the game, she just stops attacking because she just wants to win with her combo.
Yeah. I can see the different playstyles, and since I am someone who has a very adaptable playstyle, depending on the kind of deck I run, I can see myself in little of the characters and not the entire character, which I personally believe would just be a disservice.
Yeah, I suppose. I also liked the cat girl. The cat girl had a lot of personality.
Yeah. Even though she had, like, very small screen time, though.
Yeah, well, she never got to actually fight a full battle. But she gets about as much screen time as the fatty.
Yeah, screen time to only talk and whatnot to give commentary on Manaka's other battles.
That is true. Do you think
her battle with Manaka was very done. It was quick. And I think that personally, if you want to show a lot of the battles that she has to go through, I mean, trying to keep a steady pace with a story like this, that's very fair. But when you want to tell the story of someone progressing through a tournament and you want to show off all these characters with quirky personalities and different kinds of decks, you can't just scoot on by if they Okay, this is what I kind of connect to my philosophy when it comes to like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example. The Yu-Gi-Oh anime has been running its course. If you have a duelist character that has a unique character design, you want to see more of their deck build and more of their duels. Because the more generic looking you are, the less interesting you are. And then if you have someone who is very interesting, and you only get to see only a tidbit of the match, in my honest opinion, you kind of waste that character in a card game story like this, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, you definitely got to make a balance though between theatricality and reality. And honestly, like that's how it. There would be some battles in a real tournament. Like in Magic the Gathering, I don't know how it is in Yu-Gi-Oh, but in Magic the Gathering, if a burn player sits down and the other person plays Leyline of Sanctity, the game is just over. The burn player might not even play their first drawn their first card, but he just goes, "That's it, good game." Um, so it gave it a little bit more of an air of reality to me for there to be games like that where it was just done.
I mean, yeah, and Wizard of Soul is kind of an interesting combination of Magic and a few other different card game out there. So I definitely, and that's kind of what I like about this manga, even though it's Wizard of Soul's not a real thing.
Yeah, they didn't have to like. It didn't feel like a commercial, you know. It didn't feel like they were trying to advertise for Slife of the Sky Dragon. It just felt like they were trying to tell a story, and this was the method they go through. And
Yeah,
even
and
then,
you know
well,
what's very interesting to me, at least?
what's
The author of this manga actually has little tidbits about the little, like, there's some chapters where there's a little backstory of how some of the decks got some of their inspiration. And he actually commented on one of them saying that he initially got into art to be a card designer,
yeah, it,
which I think is very interesting and very telling that he loves creating art, and in a way, he got to live out his dream in his own manga.
yeah. Even though it didn't feel like an advertisement or a commercial, I still felt like, man, I wouldn't mind playing a Hawaiian god themed burn deck. That would be pretty cool, actually. It
Yeah,
makes me
and
want to play these decks with this cool art.
oh yeah, and I totally agree with you there. As someone who frequents a lot of news for new cards and whatnot, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little bit more popular that this actually became its own little card game.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is very niche manga. You won't even find like an article for it on Wikipedia. It's
Yeah,
sad. This
it,
is this isn't like something that deserved to be brushed off. This is a very interesting manga. Like it's not perfect, obviously. There's going to be a
yeah,
point where I talk about its flaws.
yeah. It does have a lot of flaws, and I think those flaws is that we can get more into that, but we initially wanted to talk about the characters, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there were a couple that uh, pretty easily made me hate them. You got the Sakura girl who sabotages the main character's deck in a couple games.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of dies off pretty quickly and doesn't really have a payoff. I would have liked if she went back to school and Sakura gave her an apology, but no, they just
I
sort
kind
of.
of did nothing with it, but what can you do?
Yeah. And then there was also that rival match. Like the main character has a grudge match against someone who is insulting her friend, and you really get the impression that he's a slime ball. And like, even though she's saying stuff like, "You probably should have thought that through a little bit better. You definitely made a mistake there." In the moment, because she's such a quiet character, it really felt like she was just dragging his face through the mud.
Yeah, and that's because Monica really is into a friend that she was talking to,
Yeah,
Ita.
this is a romance story. You can definitely almost forget that it is for a lot of this because it's sort of like it'll occasionally cut back and be like, "Oh, hey, this has story has a romantic element," but like, it doesn't feel forced. and also it feels like it's a background element. Like you could have cut the romance out of the story without too much difficulty, but just adding it in there gives like an extra reward for Manaka and all of her tribulations.
Well, and here's the thing. I kind of enjoyed that aspect in this manga, but Ita as a character, when you have, oh, of course, it's treading on reality a bit, but when you have him and the larger girl pretty much share a similar personality trait that they hate to lose. Him basically, like when he lost to Monica,
yeah,
he got super salty about it and felt like his world just ended. It shattered. It was gone. And that he couldn't, and most of the time he beats himself up that, oh, she probably doesn't like me because I treated her like dog crap. Well, obviously you did treat her like dog crap, my dude. But
at the same time, though, like he felt like pretty reasonably betrayed. Like if I play against a girl that like always loses, and she brings out a freaking Lantern permission deck, I'm just gonna be like, huh? Did you just hustle me? Because she straight up hustled him. She straight up just completely.
And here's the thing that I don't find it amusing necessarily. I just find it kind of interestingly compelling that both of them, both Monica and Ita, since they both have crushes for each other, yeah. And both of them, in a lot of ways, quite so, are kicking themselves in the shin, saying, "Oh, I treated the other person poorly. They probably won't like me anymore. I will just be sad."
True, but at the same time, like the story goes by so fast that it never really feels like it's reveling in that.
Yeah, true. And some of the other characters. Oh, let's talk about Roman.
Yeah. So, wait, talk about who?
Roman.
Yeah, Roman. Roman was my favorite, just because she has that spirit of competitivity and fun. Hey, I'm gonna need you to take over talking about this for a moment. I gotta go real quick.
All right.
I'll be right back.
Well, all right. Just make sure you come back when you need to. Anyway, folks, Roman, essentially as a character, she is very happy, she is excitable, and she sees the romance in basically this card game. And during her fight with Monica, she thought herself that Monica is someone who plays the game in a way that would be the more theatrical. But Monica doesn't come around with these games. And essentially, the way I see it, Roman is the more, out of our cast of characters that are very interesting individuals, she is the most likable. In a lot of ways, when it comes to me liking some characters, you would think Roman would be one of those characters I would like. That's true. And the deck that she runs is actually something that I am very fascinated by, because when you have a deck that centers around trying to summon the four cardinal directions, it's perfectly acceptable.
So I'm back. Sorry about that. That was so unprofessional, especially when we're talking about my favorite character. Man, I really like Roman. Her dedication to her combo is great. I especially like how she's defeated in her final game.
Yep.
She pulls the combo from under the rug. She copies Roman's win condition and gets that off. And just like they play that off as like a ooh, that's so sad moment. No, that was hype. That was awesome. There would have been cheers in the crowd if that was a real tournament. But it's like, oh snap, it's got to be dark for a second here. Can't let the audience think this is going to be a lighthearted, fun story. So, yeah. So talking about Roman, are there any other characters that were particularly notable?
I mean, the bigger girl, one of the first few opponents that Monica had.
I'm going to call her fatty, not because of her weight, but just because she admittedly plays a deck that focuses on dropping fatties. Um, also known as beefy creatures or just a ramp deck. But yeah,
Very
so
fair.
she kind of just exists to be the Joey Wheeler of the story. She just pops in to get beaten by the main character to show you the main character is actually really good.
Yeah, and she actually warms up to our lead Monica here, so it's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
And one of the characters that well, two characters actually, and one of them I will save for last because I remember them by name.
Yeah.
Because it's very simple for me to remember, so I'll save my thoughts on her for last.
Yeah.
But the one I want to talk about is the girl who runs a forest deck.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't remember her name. She doesn't even get a full chapter for her
She
battle.
is incredibly unremarkable.
Yeah,
I mean, her whole motivation is to
is to
get
win
to
the
the
tournament.
other character that I'm planning on talking to.
Yeah, so she can get to the end and meet her idol.
Mm-hmm. So her deck may be very interesting, but she herself isn't really.
Yeah,
And that's kind of disappointing.
She's sandwiched between two really big battles near the end. If
Yeah.
she came earlier, she probably would have had more impact. I feel like she could have just replaced Fatty.
Yeah.
And in a traditional anime, she would have, because that was the battle where Minako shows off her key card, Persephone. In any other typical Yu-Gi-Oh story, she would have been the first person so that you can show off the Dark Magician and all that stuff. But I think
true.
There's some basis in putting her late. It adds that sense of realism, which is just randomness in the scenario. Like, yeah, sometimes you're just going to make it to the final round or semifinal round and play against a complete scrub lord.
Yeah, but the one character that I'm fascinated by some characters.
Yeah.
And I would say one character that fascinated me in this manga is the one I want to talk about, Aoi. She is a idol that had a live event that was coinciding with the tournament because she is the exhibition match for the tournament. After Monica won, she got the chance to duel against Aoi. And Aoi's combos, clean. Perfection. Oh, good lord.
Gosh, like, that sort of person I would have very mixed feelings about in real life, especially if this was a more niche video game or card game in this setting, because she's freaking basically playing the McDonald's Happy Meal as her deck. She's flipping dropping local specialty dish cards, but then sideboards into a god tribal deck. It's like, oh, well, I can see you're going for that brand deal earlier on there. Also, that's not how sideboarding works. You don't get to switch out your entire deck. You don't go food tribal and then god tribal in two different games, man. It's not how it works.
Not really, but it made the story far more entertaining. And I kind of liked her personality, how she was very happy to actually get serious about facing off against Monica.
Yeah, it was.
And I think that's the one thing that a lot of the other characters kind of missed is that, well, other than Roman, is when Monica, when she got serious, the other characters just felt discouraged, very disappointed. But when Monica put the first win against Aoi, I was like, oh, okay. You want to play like that? Well, we can play like that. Let's have fun.
Yeah, it was pretty hype. I like the fight. It served a very important narrative purpose to remind us that Monaka was not invincible the whole time. It adds to that air of realism to see the main character lose a game, which is important. I did not like that at that point they started to use transparent text boxes so that they could show off all the cards. it got a little bit too complicated for me. Seeing her drop Amaterasu and then dropping 6 other cards that all have their own effect, and it's like, okay, guys, you could just have her play like 1 and then just say that she's leaving. Like, the first game, you see like just generic fatty cards and Hades Plunder. The second game introduces another one of Monaco's cards and introduces a couple of the enemy's deck. But this game introduces like 18 cards because it's got to introduce all the food specialties and then all the gods. It felt kind of like the author was like, oh man, I really want to draw all these other cards. I guess I got to fit them in somewhere. I suppose they won't notice if I just slide in there at the end.
But I like the concept behind the God Tribal that Aoi had.
Yeah, like I like the aesthetics of the decks. They are very cool.
No, I like the kind of the play style that it has, and this is connected to Yu-Gi-Oh again. The Guardian deck that a character in Duel Monsters ran, and also in the actual card game. These are monsters that have equipped spells. When they're equipped to them, they can only be summoned that way. And when I saw these particular monsters in this manga, I'm reminded of the Guardians. Like Amaterasu had an equipped magic, so did Tsukiyomi. Everything had a spell connected to it in Aoi's God deck.
It's actually pretty interesting that like you feel more attached to the moments that like have more of a resonance to Yu-Gi-Oh, while I'm more attached to the resonance of Magic. That's pretty interesting that they could like that he's like balancing these two major blockbuster.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because we have a game that was made here in the West, that being Magic, and then you have something that was made in Japan, like Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's always neat to see a manga like use Western elements. Like you're like, oh, you know about that too? What?
Yeah, and that's why I said that Wizard Soul as a card game in this world plays similar to the way Magic does.
Yeah, in the first chapter,
it has a lot of things.
Blue-green character.
Yeah, and it has similarities between both of these very top-tier card games in the world of card games.
Now we need a spin-off where her sisters play Pokemon. That would be great. Just more of this. I just want more Wizard Soul. I wish it was more popular so that it got like an anime adaptation. Oh well.
I think it would be very interesting to at least give it a small OVA or whatnot. It wouldn't hurt it. But the one thing I can say is that to kind of have our closing thoughts and this is going to be one of our more shorter reviews in the grand scheme of things. That's why we can completely agree that this was good. Even though our scoring is very different, we can still say that it's good.
Yeah, like
and it's definitely, like Jeffrey said.
Yeah, if I would go on your score system, it would probably be like a 3.5 out of 5. We're in agreement here, you know? Like in some other episodes, we like kind of clash and we both got to explain our things. But here we're all like, this was very interesting. Like this is definitely, worth time. It's not amazing, but it's definitely something different.
It is very surfaceable for what it is. It won't, it's not groundbreaking, but it just tells the story it wants to tell, and that's essentially it. And like I said, I'm still going to keep my score of 3.5 out of 5. Still a very good manga. Try to read it, look for it. And let's just wait to see what we have next week after we discuss Jeffrey's final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts, it's good, Coming back to it, I noticed some more of the flaws. I wasn't a big fan of the ending. I think that they could have taken a bit longer to flesh out some of the revelations. But overall, I like it, even though it feels like a darker story, it doesn't dwell in it, which is exactly my favorite kind of dark, which is not all that dark. it's definitely worth reading just because of how short it is and how novel the concept is too. It's not groundbreaking, like you said, but it definitely has something to offer. If this were in a giant manga pile, it would feel distinct from every other manga in the pile, no matter what that pile is.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you there.
So, that would be both of our closing thoughts. Is this the end? Will we no longer be able to speak of trading card games?
We might be able to talk about trading card games in the future, because there are manga adaptations of various Yu-Gi-Oh series.
Right, like, please don't bully me, Exodia-san.
No, you silly fool. But enough about trading card game manga. I think it would be my turn to pick the manga for us to look into.
Perhaps. But we should discuss that off camera and wish our viewers a very merry day. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I could agree with you there. So hopefully you guys are staying safe. Those of us who live in Oregon, like Jeffrey and I do, we are just facing nothing but snow trouble right now.
That is the truth. I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and call your mom. She deserves it.
Yep,
Not
she
you
would
personally.
really appreciate the phone
You know,
calls.
I'm sure yours would, but do it.
All
Do
right,
it for me.
do it
Bye.
for all of us.